The girl leaned the bike against the inside of the bubble that encased the town and unscrewed her space helmet. Then she peeled off her spacesuit, stashed it next to the airlock, adjusted her pigtails, slung her bag over her shoulder, and hopped on her bike. She rode into the residential district past a sign that said, "Welcome to Somerville, the last haven of small-town America." You're probably asking yourself, what the hell is she reading? This is a quote from Bikes in Space, published by Microcosm Publishing, housed in Portland, Oregon. It is an anthology of science fiction that takes space and bicycles and creates this delightfully weird set of tales. So a long time ago, I talked about how I wanted to take my love of literature and bikes and meld them into a series or meld them into some kind of video. So this is the first attempt at that. A friend of mine turned me on to Bikes in Space, and I was immediately taken by the concept. Bikes in Space is the first in a series of anthologies, and this first book was published in 2013. I had the opportunity to sit down with Elly Blue, who is the editor and compiler of this series, and we had a lovely conversation about what it took to put this book together, what it is, and kind of all the things bikes and publishing and science fiction. Hi, Elly. Thank you so much for being here. So my first question to you is, who are you? And can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your work?
Sure. Well, my name is Elly Blue. I live in Portland, Oregon. I am the vice president of Microcosm Publishing. We publish and distribute books and zines. And before that, I ran my own very small publishing company that was devoted to feminism and bicycling.
When I asked her what Bikes in Space was, this is how she answered.
So Bikes in Space is a series of anthologies of feminist bicycle science fiction and fantasy. It's almost all short stories. A few of them have comics sprinkled in there. Sometimes I publish art that people have created on that theme, but it's mostly short stories from like 500 words to 6,000 words, a wide range of genres. They all have strong elements of feminism, bicycling, and whatever the theme of that anthology is.
I've read a lot of feminist theory. I've read a lot of feminist writing, and I have to say that I have never seen something like this in this genre, which is what drew me to it in the first place. I've always thought of bikes as inherently subversive. Like, yes, there is this side of cycling that is elitist and bougie, but there's also this side of cycling that is inherently about social justice. It's about the right to mobility and the freedom to move. And it's never occurred to me that this idea of cycling as subversive could appear or manifest in a book of feminist science fiction. So my next question for you is, this is a feminist, you call it a feminist bicycle science fiction. What does feminist bicycle science fiction mean? And how would you like tell someone that you met on the street what that is?
That's a great question. I actually had a really funny encounter early on when I was doing, I think, the second one. I was talking to someone, it was like some financial person I was interacting with, and he'd asked me what I did, and I said I published feminist bicycle science fiction. He was like, "Oh, you mean on a planet with no men?" And I was like, "Not exactly." And he was like, "Oh, all the men are enslaved." I was like, "Oh my God." Like, this is what this random old guy thinks feminism means. But that's not what it means. That's not what we're looking for. So to me, like, the feminism basically means it's like the opposite. It's not falling into bad old gender stereotypes. You know, like, think of all the science fiction you read when you were younger and some of what you probably can read today. And you've got, like, you know, the muscular guy in the spacesuit saving the wilting maiden, and she's probably saying some spunky things and showing that she has a mind of her own, but she's also, you know, not the main character. She's not the driver of the story. Her concerns are about, you know, reproduction and feelings and family and stuff like that. So, you know, honestly, like, my very baseline is like not sexist. And if a story is not sexist, I count that. Love it when people like explore overt feminist themes. I love it when people like explore gender. I love it when people take like really worn old standbys and turn them on their heads. You know, I've gotten a number of stories over the year that are set on the planet with no men.
So I asked Elly what her favorite story was. So do you have like a favorite story from the first volume, or even a favorite quote?
Man, oh, that's so hard. All right, so the first volume, that's like asking me to choose my favorite child. Like, yes, I have a favorite one, but no, I'm not going to tell anyone. I mean, I can tell you what I like best about every single story in it. But then we might be here all day.
Do you have a? I do. So I have like a favorite. I liked all of them. I had like a favorite quote because I mean the stories range from anything from like thinking of bike as a character to like these kind of philosophical introspection on like what does it mean to ride a bike in like a not so distant future, or some of them are like, you know, just you happen to be riding a bike in the story. So I really like the ones that were more of like an introspective take on it. And there was one story in particular, it was called The Revelation of Megalon 5. You can tell that I teach literature. I have it like ready to go.
You're so prepared.
Yeah. So the quote reads, it's like the third paragraph, and it says, "You believe it comes out of all the machines all around you, but in fact you are exhaling it out of your own mouth. You're worried about the heavens and the hells in front of your handlebars. You see the grinning maw, and you think your little life is going to change. You think that the future is before you and the past is behind you, but it isn't. You're not rolling forward. You're there already, and you're already long gone." We can unpack this all day. But I just thought it was so beautiful and was so interesting and just captures like often what one feels like when riding a bike, if you're like really thinking about it. And the fact that it's like in a science fiction anthology is so interesting because it's so relevant. It almost doesn't feel like science fiction.
See, and I feel like that's a story. I would never get a story like that anymore because I'm promoting this as a science fiction anthology. Whereas that first zine I was promoting as a zine. It's like this new issue of Taking Lily and send me some fantastical fiction. And like that individual who wrote that, Megalon 5, I don't think he's sitting around being like, what's the, you know, call for submissions lately for the Journal of Science Fiction and Fantasy, you know?
Yeah.
He's more like in his backyard building a freak bike.
Yeah.
And you know, being like, oh, I could write something down about what I think for this little thing, you know?
Yeah.
So that's something I feel like I have a little bit lost along the way, is getting that kind of very out of left field perspective. And yeah, I love that piece.
The thing about Bikes in Space, the thing about this particular book is that it doesn't end here. There are multiple volumes that have been published over the years. It crosses all kinds of different genres, all kinds of different identities, all different kinds of writing. So if you are interested in checking those out, I will link that in the description below.
And we've had a number of themes. The first two, I didn't have a theme. The third one, I kicked it off with zombies. That was when I realized that like people's creativity is especially limitless when you put limits on it.
Yes.
Like the variations on that are amazing. There was one about sort of utopias and dystopias. There was one where the theme was sort of intersections, whatever that means to you. That came out super cool, I thought. One of my former interns, who's now an editor at Microcosm, Lydia Rose, pitched the idea of an anthology by all trans and non-binary authors about trans and non-binary characters. That's called Transgalactic Bike Ride, and they managed to get Charlie Jane Anders to write a story for it, which is amazing. I know, she's so cool and her story is so good. We had one about dragons. The most recent one was about cats, and the one that's coming out in a few months is about witches. It's called Bicycles and Broomsticks. And then the ones I'm working on right now, the theme was books, and I got so many good submissions that I'm actually publishing 2 volumes of that one.
Oh, that's so cool. So if one is interested in submitting to your next volume, where can someone find that call for papers?
Actually about to post a call for submissions for the next one, which will be about like plants, gardens, and greenery. I haven't come up with a clever title yet, but call for submissions should go up in a few days, maybe by the time this is live. And I'm going to put it on the Microcosm blog and on my blog at takinglelane.com. But if you search bikes in space, call for submissions, you'll find it.
Okay, cool. And that, my friends, is where we will end today. If you want to check out Bikes in Space, I have linked that in the description below. And I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, what should we read next? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this content and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and I will see you guys next time. Artificial crickets were still chirping, and all the windows were dark behind the floral print curtains. All right, here we go. This might be ugly, but we'll see. No one saw a small figure in a spacesuit step through the hissing airlock, and it creates this sort of delightfully weird. The figure wheeled a bright red Schwinn cruiser at its side. Over